I'm just a pretty girl with an ugly smirk. You convince yourself that it's one of my quirks again. Too high, keeping shoes.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. Sorry about the lighting again. I don't have a proper ring light yet. I will get one. Today we are doing my July wrap up, and as you've probably seen by the thumbnail, I don't have many physical books to show you. I read a lot of these on audio, so we're just gonna go in the order as that I've put them on my tracker, and we'll just see where we go from there. In the month of July, I read a total of 14 books, which equates to 61 hours of audio. And then page wise, I'm not 100% sure what that is because I haven't entered that into my spreadsheet yet. Why I haven't, I have no idea. I need to enter the rest of my pages in, but it's looking at around 3,500, and a range of ratings. From the top, in the month of July, my first book was Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering. I do have the physical book of this, but I don't know where I put it. I've been reorganising my shelves, and it must have been in the wrong stack because I've only put the books back that were on my recently hauled. So it's somewhere around my shelves, but I gave that 4 stars. Overall, I enjoyed the narrative, the characters, the world building, the magic system, the little bit of the magic system that we saw, but I felt that at times it just lulled a bit. Some of the scenes in between the action were a bit too drawn out, and I did find myself like slightly losing interest at points. But when I was in the action and there were more in-depth character building moments, then those are the parts of the story that I was really invested in. I would highly recommend this book. There is bits of travelling, there's like the found family vibes, there's a lot of character building and a lot of relationship drama. I say drama, and it's not like a romantic relationship drama. It's not like familial bumps in the road. It's really good, and I would highly recommend reading it. It is a lengthy read, but you can now get it on Audible. Very much worth the time, and I cannot wait to pick up more of Pam Pickering's work. I know that she has written things prior to this in a totally different world, so I will be dipping into that, no doubt. The next book we have to talk about wasn't that great. It was a DNF. Right, okay, DNF time. I read this mixed media. I also read the Heliotrope in a mixed media format. It is Brizinger by Christopher Paolina. I will put a picture up because I'm now on hold the full series. I DNF'd this I did give it a good whack. Maybe 150 pages in, I think. Maybe a bit more, I don't know. And it was just not, I was not vibing with it. I couldn't do it. So it was the book that the series we were reading for the It's All About Fantasy Book Club. When we had another book to go after this as well, which was even bigger. And I just couldn't bring myself. I was so annoyed with myself that I was thinking of DNFing it, and it took me a long time to actually DNF that book. I finally did it, and I was so thankful for it, but because I put it off so long, that's why I didn't read as many books, because every time I thought of reading I had to read that, and it was a time, and it wasn't a good one at that. However, the next book that is on the list is The Invisible Life of Annie LaRue. Now, this is a reread for me, and this was for the Readalongs. I read this a lot earlier. I read this before the Vengeful live show. This reread just caught me in the feels. I cried. I knew exactly what was going to happen, but you can't help wishing for things to turn out in a certain way. You can't help but want that for these characters. If you don't know what Addie's about, Addie is about a girl who makes a deal with the darkness, and she basically doesn't want to have an arranged marriage, and in her bit of panic she says she will do anything to have her freedom. We all know in these kinds of situations, the dark things or the fate or whatever it is in the situation of the place of the person making the deal can twist things. So she's left living 300 years by the time we meet her in the present, and she's free. But the issue is no one can remember her. Everyone she meets, as soon as the door closes, as soon as backs are turned, they forget who she is. She can't leave her mark anywhere. Until there's somebody she meets that can see her and remember her. And it is such a different book from Schwab. I mean, when the time this came out, there were a lot of people saying if you like Addy, you won't like Dark Shade of Magic, and vice versa. I would highly disagree with that. Which is why I was worried initially about picking this book up. I have read a lot of Schwab now, and the writing is different in every new series. The way that they build worlds, the way that they build the characters, and the relationships that are formed and things like that, it doesn't feel very samey or formulaic. It's a totally different book for Schwab, and I loved it. And then the next book I read audibly, and it was Fake It Till You Bake It by... do I even know who this is by? Did I write the author down? Jamie Wesley. Now, I gave this... it'd probably be 2.5, 3, because I'd rounded it up to 3 on my spreadsheet, because I was, at the time I finished it, I gave it a 3. But I didn't dislike this book, but it was very meh. Like, there were certain things that were being said, that they were being repeated, and we didn't really need to know, you know, the same thing. You know, once you said that so-and-so's eyes are a certain way, or they've got smooth cocoa skin, or whatever, we know. You don't need to constantly mention those features about that person, because we've already seen it, we already know it, and it got a bit... I'm very much like, once you notice it, you can't not notice it. And I know it's a sports romance, because the guy in this is a hockey player, and quite a well-known player at that. He's gonna mention how large he is. I want to say it's hockey, but I don't know if it is. See, this is the brain. He is a famous sportsman, and he's opened a bakery with a couple of his friends that are also on his team. And I loved their banter. I loved the angsty sort of relationship between the two main characters, but I just felt that there was some things that were missing, and sometimes I found myself rolling my eyes when the author was repeating certain phrases, and it sort of got a bit like, yeah, just we need to get to the end, and just like, because we know what's going to happen. Even though a lot of romances I do know what's going to happen, what's happening in the moment keeps me invested in the characters and in the story, whereas I was at times just wanting it to get to the end so that we could have the happily ever after and be done with it, which is not really what you want to do when you're reading a book. You want to enjoy the characters, the relationships and all that kind of stuff. You want to be living in the moment when you're there, and I just wasn't, so there's that. The next one is also a 3 stars, and I'm so gutted about this. I'm so good, and I'm also debating whether or not to continue with this series, and this is The Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. The first 2 books were like a 5-star and a 4-star, I think, but this one, I honestly don't know what the brain just wasn't accepting that this was that this was on the same level as the first 2 books. Things came together, but there was also some things that were sort of like left unanswered and like in the air, you know, more things are to come in this world sort of thing. And I do like that in a book, when I know that it's setting it up for other things. That's fine. This book took turns I didn't like. See, they call it grimdark, and don't get me wrong, Glockter, sir, if I could afford it, I would pay your therapy bill. Glockter was probably the most interesting character in this. We follow Glockter, Giselle, and Logan, main characters, and the main POVs that you follow, and then the people that they come in contact with, and the relationships that they build and things like that. I just feel like with this, when everything was coming together and things were being revealed, I just didn't seem to care, which was strange. And it's not half as dark as some things I've read. So people call Joe Abercrombie the king of grimdark, but there's some indie fantasies that I've read where I've been like, oh my god, I can't. Ew, no, I can't. I'm like, it's grim. and it's dark, and it's just not a happy place. Like, if you want to think dark, but I felt that it was more dark reading the Fortuna's Swan series. It is more, like, romance heavy, obviously, than this type of fantasy. But when it came to, like, the vibes, I felt way more, like, darkness from the Fortuna's Swan series than I did from any of these 3 books. I can get, like, the grim dark side of it. I know what people mean by that, but I think it's because I've read other fantasies where it's just kind of like, wow, that is brutal, like, savagery, that this kind of doesn't feel as good in a way. I don't know, it's very strange. I was very disappointed. There was 3 more books in the series, but, like, set in the same world but different characters. I think that's how it works, but I don't think I'm going to pick this up. And I have got the hardbacks of the first 2 in this series that I am going to unhaul, because I just can't. I can't see the point in keeping them. I won't reread it. I was going to at one point reread this and tab the series, but that's just let me down so much. I'm not gonna. I need to stop feeling bad about, like, getting rid of and unhauling books I'm not a fan of. The next one is a reread, and it was just so good. It was so good. I missed the Brown Sisters read along, so I can't remember how this conversation came up, but there was a conversation that popped up during the time that I was talking to somebody, and this series came back up, and I was like, oh, I want to reread that series. So I want to vlog it. So I vlogged my first book. I vlogged reading this. There's things that happen in this that I had forgotten about, but I loved Red. I loved Chloe. The relationship, the disability rep. It's not an unvoiced review. I will say this again. I said this last time I rated this book. It's not an unvoiced review, but from my perspective, reading this, I didn't feel sorry for Chloe, what she was going through. I didn't feel pity for her, but it does give an understanding of more of what those kinds of invisible disabilities can do to a person and can make them feel. And Tali does a great job of making the reader understand what Chloe's going through without sitting there pitying her and thinking that she needs to be mollycoddled. Do you know what I mean? It's like I said, it's not an unvoiced review. I will link Andy down below if you want to go check her out. She is somebody who probably could speak better to the representation in this book. Andy's one of my friends that does deal with chronic pain. So yeah, she might be able to give you a better review on the representation in this, but I loved it. Next up we have I've done a vlog on this as well. This was a Booktuber Versus series that I was reading, and it was Jem's recommendation, so Jem made me do this, and it was reading the 3 books that are currently out by F.T. Lukens. They're not a series, they are standalones, but I read them in publication order, and I can tell you, so that was In Deeper Waters, So This Is Ever After, and Spellbound. I have already pre-ordered the 4th one, is I think Otherworld, or Otherworld, that's due out next year. I am going to be getting the hardcovers of the first 3. These books were all 5 stars. The relationships, the wholesomeness, my heart was aching. Like, I felt like so emotional about how wholesome and adorable these characters were. You want to protect them at all costs. You want to protect the relationships. You want everything to turn out well. The representation in this is just so good. And in the first book, I think Jem and Becca have both said this, but the familial relationships in the first book are just some of the best familial relationships I've seen in a fantasy ever. You've got Schwab with Kel and Rye. It rivals that, to be honest. Like, the love they have for each other, like, the pureness of their love, their relationship was just amazing. And then the romantic relationships that develop, communication between them, the banter, it's just so good. Book 3 was probably my favourite, and Sun and Rook were just the most adorable pairing, and the whole vlog, I could not stop saying how adorable is the word of the vlog. They are very quick reads. If you want something that's just gonna give you that breather, as you all know, I do love my high fantasy, epic fantasy, political, war, you know, bloody fantasies. Like, I love stuff like that. But there are also times when I can't deal with like very complex political books, and these are the kind of books that I like to read, that are just so well written, great relationships, great characters, and just a fine fucking fresh fabulous time is all I can say. So there we go. Next up, we had a reread. I've missed one. But next we had a reread, which was Red, White and Royal Blue. This is just solidified in my brain that I want that Casey McQuiston set that's on Illumicrate. And if it's still there when I get my first wage, I'm going to be getting it. These two, Alex and Henry, I am so happy and so thankful to Chloe for A, like recommended this book, but B, for purchasing this book for me and thrusting it upon me. Because I am not mad about this. I can totally understand why this is a comfort reread for Chloe, and for so many people love this book, and are so excited for the film to come out because it's amazing. It's 5 stars. There's scenes in this that I could literally just read this for the text conversations that they have, for the email conversations, and for the turkey. If you know, you know. And then finally, the one thing that I read at the end of July that we'll be getting unhauled, unfortunately, is The Ancient Magus Bride, and I've given it 3.5 stars. It was a manga as part of I'm doing like a manga taste test video, and that was one of the manga that I read at the end of July that I am going to be unhauling. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this because the reasons behind me unhauling it are going to be in my video when it comes out in the vlog. But I just feel like I've watched the anime, and the anime is probably going to be the best way to go for me. But I still might not complete the anime, and I can't say why. If you're interested in knowing why, then just watch the vlog, because I don't want to sway anyone either way. If you're interested in the manga, I suggest you pick it up yourself to judge for yourself whether it's something you want to read and continue with. But there's just something that I'm not 100% on within the first story that I've read. I said that's the final one. That's not the final one. The final book of the month that I'm going to talk to you about is Chain of Gold. I'm going to be rereading this before I do the live show with Becca, because I read this right at the beginning of July, very close to the beginning of July actually, and I'm kind of sad that I did, but also kind of not, because it means that I can reread it before I need to go onto the live. It's the 9th, Wednesday the 9th of August is a live show. I might just put it on over the weekend. I mean, this is, I can't say it's my fave. It's got like some of my faves in here already, and characters that we've met throughout the Shadowhunter series. If you don't know what this is for Becca's By the Angel Along. We're coming to the end of the By the Angel Along, and I'm extremely gutted that this Shadowhunters universe world situation is coming to an end at the moment, and we're unsure about when future books will be published. But this whole journey on the Shadowhunters has been up and down, not gonna lie. Mostly up. Will we read all the books? Probably, now that I think about it. But my favourite has got to be The Dark Artificers, because of Will and Jem, obviously. So this follows the children of the characters in The Dark Artificers, and that's all I can say. That's all I can say is this is so good. I hate Grace. I hate Grace with a passion. Please don't tell me that she's been through stuff. I don't care. I don't give a flying fuck what she's been through. All of the good guys need to be protected. Lottie said this in her video. The only downside of the Shadowhunter series world, books within that world, is that in order to get the full experience and to know all about the characters' backgrounds and their relationships and all that kind of stuff, you need to read them in a particular order. You can't, even though they are the Mortal Instruments series and the Dark Artificers and the Infernal Devices, that's the wrong way around, but you know what I mean, because even though they are separate series, you do need to read all of them, including the like short stories, up until this point before starting this, because there's so much that you would miss out on if you haven't read the previous books, if you were to just jump straight into this. And that's the only thing, is that you've got to be willing to invest your time into it. If you don't care that you're not going to get the full backstory or full understanding of the characters, then technically, yeah, you could go in and read this, but I think that you'd be doing yourself and the author a disservice by doing that, because you wouldn't get the full grasp of like what the characters mean. You won't have that love that's been developed over these books that we've read. I keep saying that I'm moving away from YA, but this is a prime example of how I'm not moving away from all YA. This series is just, it's gripping, it's just so good. It's so good, and I do highly recommend. Thank you very much for joining me and watching. If you do like me and you want to see more of me, please like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. If you are here and you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything to say, please leave a black heart, very much appreciated. And until next time, enjoy whatever it is you're reading / doing or watching, and I will see you all very soon.
Tell me why every time I fall in love it seems to be